over the hourglass and said, now Freemasonry will be more important. The function of Freemasonry will be to prevent intelligent but moral men from ascending. It's twofold. Okay, used to be to protect evil men with intelligence, the Francis Bacons, the John Dees, and so on. Then it flips in the 17th century, in the 1700s, it flips and becomes a way to prevent other men from the street level who also have a brain, who are highly intelligent, right, the servants of truth, from ever operating in society. It became a filter system to prevent great men from ever having the reins of power and control. This is extremely important. I mean, we don't have the time to elaborate on this, but a lot of people's quotes, like say from Benjamin Disraeli and other critics of these secret networks, that's what they were sensing in the 1900s, and in the 20th century it goes on today. Freemasonry as we know it today is not really so much about preserving occult Enochian secrets. It's about making sure that men who are good and virtuous never gain the reins of power unless they're vetted by the royals and vetted by the masters of masonry.
Okay, that's an interesting theory, that's for sure. Absolutely. Let's move on here, Micheal, and look at the next slide.
Well, this just brings out the fact that the Judaic connections again. If you look at the high degrees, you'll find that the top degree, the very highest degree of Freemasonry, is called the Sublime Prince of the Royal Secret. The fact that it even uses the word prince obviously indicates royalty, because that's what that word implies, right? Second, they're talking about royal secrets. There's the royalty idea again, and then there's a secret. And I emphasize that this has to do with the survival and agenda of the ancient, Akhenaten and his cult of Aton, who I believe is the solar cult that's responsible for the rise of all of these different organizations. But the symbolism shows that. But the Judaic system, forget about Atonism for a minute. Just if we stick with the Judaism, what do we find? We find that the term Holy Royal Arch, which is a very high degree in Freemasonry, it's another giveaway. Because that term, Holy Royal Arch, is a preliminary. You have to pass through the Royal Arch in order to become a Knights Templar, right? So say you start as a Mason and you start climbing. By the time you get to the Royal Arch degree, which is called, again, I emphasize the Royal, Holy Royal Arch, then you become a Knights Templar. Well, guess what? The 3 degrees within the Holy Royal Arch are Judaic names. Zerubbabel, Haggai, and Joshua, all right? That's the Prince of Jerusalem, the Prophet, and the High Priest. They're all terms out of Judaism.
That is interesting. So let's see here. We have, and this is only, is that in the York Rite, or is that from the Scottish Rite that you mentioned right now? Because I'm looking for it.
I think it's York Rite. They're joined
York
anyway,
Rite.
remember?
Yes, at the top, definitely. Okay, and then we can move on a little bit, check a little bit more of the slides. So we have a little bit of, I guess, symbolism here, Micheal, we can look at.
No, it's just that now is the time to emphasize that when you're speaking Judaism, you are actually speaking Atonism. Again, it's one of these plays of words. The Jews are not as we know them today. When you see people put in front of you or in the encyclopedias as the famous Jew, when we're talking from Masonic terms, you're not referring to the people that are known as the Jews living in Israel or who are religious Jews. The Jews need to understand this, and the rest of the world also needs to understand it. This is a play on words. The word Judaic, Judite, which is more properly Yahud, is where the word comes from. Y and J and I were interchangeable, you see? So it all goes back to the Judites. But the Judites, as we've discussed on many other programs, and as I go into my Irish Origins book, is basically Atonism. And Atonism was created by Akhenaten, the famous pharaoh, and you saw a picture of him there earlier, as the Lion of Judea.
Yes.
So whenever you see this symbol of the Jews, the tribe of Judah is symbolized by the lion, like if you looked at the slide you just had up there.
Yeah.
And just incidentally, that happens to be on most of the coats of arms of the royal families of the world, because they know that they are bloodline or ideologically descended from these very same Atonists or Judites, if you have to use that term.
Yes.
And so forth and so on. So again, the symbolism of the lion, you see, is the Lion of Judah. But Judah is not the Jews. Whether they are brainwashed to believe it, that's neither here nor there, or whether anybody else believes it. Well, they've just been reading from the books that have been presented to you by these very, oligarchs. This aristocracy has been commissioning all of this history. What we're talking about here is alternative history that really goes to explain what's going on.
Cleopatra's Needle again, of course, in London. Another slide.
Emphasizing the same point we've made. It's the Atonist connection here. This Cleopatra's Needle. And by the way, there's also exact duplicate in New York.
Of Cleopatra's Needle? Isn't that
Well, yeah,
a genuine one as well?
Totally genuine.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, it's 3 Cleopatra's Needle around the world, isn't that right? The 3 different ones.
There's 13 obelisks in Rome.
Right.
There's 21 obelisks on the planet Earth. There's a multiple of 7 again, 777, right? 21 obelisks. The 2 that stand in the middle, one in the middle of London and the one in New York, and by the way, they're also from a sacred geometry point of view.
Yeah.
Are connected. They're all lined up with a certain for geomantic reasons, but even avoiding that point, do you know that both of those obelisks, the one in London and the one in New York, come from the city of the sun in Heliopolis?
Heliopolis, absolutely. And then pointing out as well, there's one in Paris, of course, as well, a third one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So here again, we have the Egyptian connection, or more specifically, the Atonist connection. It's very, 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 very foolish to say just Egypt, as if Egypt had just one dynasty or one kind of, priesthood going on there. My goodness, there's a big difference between the Amonist and the Atonist.
Absolutely. Let's look at a little bit at the Knights of Kadosh. See if we can
it's another word. It's interesting. It comes from the same picture that we showed before. The supreme degree is the sublime prince of the royal secret. 2 down from that, you have a thing called the Knights Kadosh. And that's a very interesting word. It has many meanings, but one of them is very close to the word Kadesh, which is a city in modern-day Syria. So say for a moment we go, it's the Knights of Kadesh. Well, then we're talking Hittites. And it's interesting because Hittites, the people who lived, at Kadesh, and they also, another group was called the Amuru. And the Amuru is often known as the Amorites.
Yes.
There's a tentative connection that the Amorites may be the originators, or they may be the ancestors of the Merovingian dynasty.
Really?
Okay, this is because of etymology suggests this.
Yeah.
The evidence isn't 100% strong, but the etymology suggests that the Merovingians, they have the same word root, you see, as the mermen, the men of the Mer, which means the pyramid, by the way. It also secondarily means the sea, the man of the sea.
Yeah.
You see all of this kind of caper. But Kadesh was a city in Syria, and it was Aryans that lived there, the ancient Arya. So, and of course, it turns out that there was an Atonist connection because Thutmosis III, and by the way, the 2 obelisks that we just talked about were constructed by Thutmosis. He was the one who ordered the very creation of the 2 obelisks that stand in New York and in London on the Victoria Pier and Victoria Embankment, were commissioned by the Atonist pharaoh, Thutmosis III. So there's the Atonist connection again. What's even more, and it was interest Christians, is that it's at Kadesh that's very close to the so-called plain of Megiddo.
Armageddon.
Yeah, which is where Thutmosis had to come in to fight the Kadeshites, meaning the ones from Kadosh. The Hittites, they had a massive war there. It's a very well-known war in ancient times. It happened at Megiddo, which is in this area. And so there's a Battle of Armageddon tie-in there. So these high degrees of Freemasonry, again, not only bear Judaic symbolism, they bear Atonist Egyptian symbolism.
Really, really interesting. Hey, Michael, we're up at 1 hour. I think it's a good place to take a little break here, listen to a little bit of music, and then return with part 2. So stay with us, Michael, and everyone out there watching. We'll continue here with our part 2 in a little while. We'll listen to some cold cut, as it were. Thanks for this segment, Michael. See you on the other end.
Get your rock and roll and get it under control. Right now it's
Watching you into watching me, watching you, watching we methodically. Panoptic sheep stay sleeping, peeping. MK Ultra, vulture soldiers, Kool-Aid, acid, electric pulses. A bay full of pigs in the sky of Vulcans. Marilyn Monroe swinging with the Sultans. Ain't it something? Money's bumping, but it's all in mode with no production. Murdoch, pot locks, cop for consumption. My talk's co-opted for saying something.